It is a hot and greasy Wednesday evening in the middle of August, or towards the end of August, I should say. The baseball season is heating up and the playoff race is coming alive. Welcome to One on One here on 90.7 FM, WFUV's longest running sports call-in show. I'm Thomas Aiello, joined alongside here Keenan Troy. Lou Orlando will be joining us later. And Keenan, welcome to One on One. I know this is your first show. How are you feeling today, dude?
It was a long time coming, Thomas. I remember we were doing training together end of freshman year. Then, the world shuts down. And I thought so did my WFUV career. But no, got back into it this summer, did some podcast work. And then when Alex Will's text, you can't ignore it. So got right back, got the notification, got all my notes lined up, ready for a great show, talking baseball, fantasy, everything to look forward to in the best time of the year.
Oh, there's a ton of stuff. And the Alex Wolves, he has an Android, folks, and the rest of us have iPhones. So when that green text bubble shows up on your phone, you better respond or else he will come after you. Of course, I'm just playing. But we've got a loaded show, as I said before, baseball. Keenan, we're going to be talking some football later between some starting quarterback battles going on, particularly in Chicago and New Orleans. And we're going to talk some Jets in a little bit, as well as fantasy football. We're going to be giving our favorite people to pick, our sleepers, and people you should really avoid come your fantasy drafts. But I think I'm most excited for that fantasy draft. Fantasy draft segment, I just had one of my drafts last night. I'd say it was pretty up and down, but I think some of the guys that we have on our lists, I think they can help out some people a lot this year, Keenan.
Yeah, no doubt. I think we've seen in recent years too with fantasy. It's a lot of times, you get those big weeks from guys that fly under the radar, and with how violent football is really. Sometimes you're Mike Thomas in the first round. If he goes down, week 3, you're kind of screwed out of a wide receiver. So I think depth, especially this year, in terms of finding good sleeper picks at skill positions, is going to help out everybody in their league.
And PPR, we know that's a receiver-heavy, pass-catching-heavy sort of league, and you got to get all the receiving players you can get. But way before we get to that, we have to talk a little bit about some baseball. There's an AL playoff race heating up. The Yankees are lurking right behind the Tampa Bay Rays, and Keenan is actually a Chicago White Sox fan, so they're being pests to his group. And we also have to talk about the National League, the Mets, who have been all over the place, I think is the phrase we can use to describe their season. And Sam Davis will be joining us in about a minute. And Keenan, the AL and NL playoff race, I think it's a lot of fun this year. And we have a couple of good things we do need to point out to our viewers here about what's coming up come October.
Yeah, I think, in both leagues, you've got Central. The Reds are really hot right now. We're going to talk about them a little bit, see if they're going to, see our thoughts on if they're going to be able to keep this momentum going. But in both leagues, you've got the West and the East battling for spots, and both of them having, especially in the AL, having wild card implications with your position and your division. And then in that worst division in baseball, the NL East, even we're August 25th, we still don't know who the best team is out there, which is incredible to say with how loaded we thought they were going to be coming into the season. So yeah, ton of baseball coming up. Mentioned the White Sox. I'm going to probably sound off when we talk Yankees because we know who the best team is in the AL and they reside in Chicago. But yeah, looking forward to talking everything about America's pastime.
And Keenan, I just need to show you the T-shirt. I have a Yankees Joe DiMaggio Breakfast of Champions shirt, and he does not like it. He's sounding me off. He's got the hand motion going already. But we do have to give respect to the little brother team in New York, the New York Mets. And with that, Sam Davis is going to be joining us in a bit to give us an update on what's going on in Flushing. But Keenan, before I bring Sam in, the Mets season has just been a roller coaster with the great start they had. And then they go to the All-Star break and the wheels just fell off. And, I don't know if they're going to be able to recover from this kind of at all. I think it's a lost cause at this point.
I think with the Mets, they're fortunate in the position they're in because they're in such a lousy division where realistically, if they're in any other division, they would be dead to rights. But I think mentioning the wheels coming off after the All-Star break, I think there's a lot of questions to be asked for that front office coming into the off season. If they don't make the playoffs, and even if they do make the playoffs, because when you have, such a, on paper, such a good looking lineup and, starting pitching that you think, okay, DeGrom's always going to give you something. And then, you've got some question marks in there, but you think going into the trade deadline, you'd be trying to retool either bullpen or, get some starting pitching help. And we really didn't see that from the Mets. So definitely some question marks going to be raised after this, after the finish of the season for them.
There's a lot of questions that need a ton of answers. And who better to answer that than the man who's in Flushing, Queens right now himself, Sam Davis, WFUV's Mets beat reporter. First of all, Sam, what's going on? It's great to see you again. Tell us a little bit what's going on right now in Queens.
What's going on, guys? Glad to be here. A lot just went down in that fifth inning. I was rushing over from watching the game here to be with you guys, but the Mets loaded the bases, and it looked like the inning was over, and the Mets were going to strand even more base runners and would be down 1-0 in this game. But Chris Bryant made a huge throwing error, and the Mets did tie the game at 1. Taijuan Walker's been tremendous so far. He made one mistake, which was a Chris Bryant homer. So the score is tied at 1 right now. I don't know. It feels like every night is kind of a must win with the way the Mets have been playing lately, but certainly they caught a break there. Let's see if they can capitalize on it.
And Sam, I want to kind of follow up with Taijuan Walker. I think he's the physical embodiment of what the Mets season has been. I remember telling you that he should be an all-star, and well, he rightfully deserved it in that first half of the year. And now here they come, these Mets with Walker. I mean, of course, being the lead guy, because DeGrom's been hurt on and off all year, and the injury bug has struck again. It seems every year with this team at this point, it's almost like a holiday. But there's so many pieces that have just fallen off. And do you think at any point this year they can somewhat salvage what they've lost, or do you think this is just move on to the next season? We're playing for the off season.
I'm really close to saying it's to move on to next year. I'm just about there. Especially nights like yesterday where they lose 8-0. Being at those games, as much as it's a pleasure to cover the Mets with WFUV, those games are not fun, and they're certainly aren't fun for the players either. But I'm getting there. I mean, DeGrom did throw today, so he was cleared to do that for the first time in a long time. So he may come back. I'm not really sure. It depends on a lot of things. It's going to depend on his health, first of all, and it's also going to depend on if the Mets are still in it or even close to in it come mid-September, when is the earliest he could be eligible to come off the IL. So who knows if he'll be back. I'm trending towards probably not. And yeah, I mean, that's a huge loss. But I think when DeGrom goes down and you're starting to see maybe some inconsistencies with the starting pitching, Walker's been better, but has been a little inconsistent in the second half. It's showing the real problem with this team, which is the lineup. It's showing the real issue, which is this offense not producing with runners in scoring position. I wrote down, and I wanted to bring it here because this is an incredible stat. Since the All-Star break, they are 203, hitting 203. They're 59 for 290 with runners in scoring position since the All-Star break. So that is just awful. And that kind of just shows one of the big problems. And they're kind of just, their approach has been off. And I just think this offense, sorry to sound off, but the offense has been seriously the issue. And I think some of the injuries are kind of showing that even more.
And staying with the offense, Sam, you get Lindor back. Do you see him as is he the last hope for this Mets team? Because you saw in his absence that lackluster would be an understatement for the production. As you mentioned, especially with runners in scoring position for this Mets team, is even with Lindor back, is he going to right the ship? Are the bats going to finally wake up and, the Mets maybe be able to make a push? Or do you see him? I mean, he's not having a record breaking year. Do you see him contributing to the success, hopefully, or just contributing to the continually stagnant Mets offense?
Well, I mean, there is something to be said about Lindor's presence, and I don't think it's a full coincidence that when Lindor left and was hurt, I mean, the Mets offense became way worse. So I think, he certainly hasn't had a great year, but he does bring a very good presence to this team that I think they kind of rally around. And yesterday, that game when Lindor and Baez were up the middle for the first time since the trade, there was tons of optimism and excitement around, okay, this is maybe the point where the Mets turn things around. This is they're playing a good Giants team to start a series, and they go out and lose 8-0. And I mean, Lindor's not in the lineup tonight because he needs to be kind of eased back in because he didn't have a rehab start. So I don't know. I really don't think it's all on Lindor. It's a ton of guys in this lineup that just haven't produced. I mean, Jeff McNeil hasn't produced. Dom Smith hasn't produced. The Conforto's been super up and down. I mean, you go down the list, there's really, other than Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso, this lineup has just been extremely inconsistent and not producing to the level that you would have expected out of this team this year, which is really frustrating. I mean, especially games like we've seen, during this stretch, they played the Giants and Dodgers, and they've gone 2-9. If they lose tonight, they'll go 2-10 in that stretch. And the issue and the frustration is that most of these games are close games. Most of these games are 1 and 2 run losses where the Mets score 2 or 3 runs and lose. And I think that makes it even more frustrating because it shows that the Mets can hang around and beat good teams like the Giants and Dodgers, or at least hang around with those teams. They just can't beat them because they can't get a big hit, or the offense just doesn't really show up most of these nights. So, I mean, that's certainly the most frustrating part, but it's not all on Lindor. I mean, maybe he helps, but I'm starting to get a little pessimistic, to say the least, that things will turn around with him back in the lineup.
And Sam, you brought up Javi Baez, El Mago, who is, when he's focused, one of the most entertaining players in baseball. I don't think we can debate that, but Keenan, you can jump in on this too. There's a lot of blame to go around with how this Mets season has kind of unfolded, I guess, is the question I'm going at, between Baez being a disappointment. I would say, I think where they really failed was under signing in the offseason. Other than the Lindor trade, if you took that away, this Mets offseason was very, very plain. It was very boring, and it didn't really move the needle. And you guys, I want you both to kind of look in the crystal ball, sort of distant-ish future. What do the Mets do? I mean, in terms of transactions, because they need to address a lot of things. And I mean, start with Baez. I don't even know if re-signing him is going to be worth it.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to happen. I mean, with what he's shown so far this year, I don't think. The bottom line is that it's interesting because I think Steve Cohen is certainly not pleased with what he's seeing from this team, and that's been evident with his tweets and evident with, I'm sure, the way he feels watching the Mets every night. So something is going to happen. I don't think Baez is the answer. I mean, I always thought, I know Chris Bryant tonight. It's funny. I mean, he did make a big error, but he also hit a home run for the Giants to give them the lead, and he's crushed. I mean, he's hit tons. I think 3 out of the 5 homers he's hit with the Giants have been against the Mets. And Chris Bryant was a guy that the Mets could have gotten the offseason and very well might go out and get over this next offseason, as he'll be a free agent. They could have gotten him at the deadline. They chose not to. They went with the Javi Baez direction, which I certainly was not a huge fan of. But I mean, I think things are going to change. A lot's going to happen. It's going to, start in the front office. It's going to start, there's certainly questions around Zach Scott. There's certainly questions around Rojas, and then going down the list to just improving this offense. I think that's the key. I mean, you re-sign Stroman. That's a big move that they really should go out and make. He's been really good, consistent for the Mets. But with the lineup, something's got to happen, and it's got to happen this offseason for sure.
And before you leave, Sam, just real quick. So obviously the Mets had a tough schedule playing the Dodgers and the Giants in what was 4 consecutive series, going Dodgers, Giants, Dodgers, Giants. Tough for any team in the MLB, really. But then they kind of get their foot off the gas a little bit. They get to play like the Fish, the Marlins, that is, and then the Nationals. Is there anything from like a Mets front office perspective that you could see that you're looking for in these end of the season games? Are you looking for guys that are grinders that are going to willing to fight? Or are you already kind of in the, we're probably done, scrap the season, who are we going to keep around and whose trade value is going up?
I think the Mets are still fully in. I really do. That's the vibe I get from everyone. I was able to talk before the game with Luis Rojas, the manager, for a minute, and he's told me that, I mean, like, the mentality of the clubhouse is really even keeled, and it's something he's preached all year and kind of talked about, and just taking it night by night. So for them, I think they still believe they're in it. They still believe that it's not too late and they can turn things around. But there's certainly a huge sense of urgency with that, especially with only a month left. So I think they're just going to keep trying to push out the best lineups that they can each night and see what happens. I mean, at some point, you gotta, I guess, hope that, maybe Lindor provides a spark, or maybe this lineup that has hitters that have been proven solid major league hitters can turn things around. As somebody's cheering, something big happened. Let's see. Down the line. Did the Mets take the lead? They did. Okay. As I speak, maybe I'm speaking it into existence here. So the Mets are up 2-1 now.
Wow.
So there you go.
That.
Maybe me being negative. Maybe I should change my ways and start to believe in this team again. But this team does believe in themselves. They still do, to answer that question.
Sam, you got to take a page out of my book. You need to be negative in order to turn things positive. Thank you for the time. You do a good job. We love you, and keep the faith and get back to reporting and let us know how that game ends, dude.
Will do. Thanks, guys. Appreciate being here.
Sam Davis, one of WFUV's Mets beat reporters, and Keenan, a lot of interesting things that Sam had brought up before we go to our, I guess, transition about why they're just being bad. I think he brought up the free agent offseason and re-signing Marcus Stroman. Their pitching has been so, I guess, hyped from MLB fans because of DeGrom just being the cowbell pitcher that he is, as I use a football term, the cowbell pitcher. And then you have like Marcus Stroman behind him. Carlos Carrasco was expected to be a real piece. Taijuan Walker was a steal of a signing. And I mean, it's been up and down. DeGrom's been in and out of the rotation with injuries, even though he's been great. And Carrasco's been a disappointment. But other than that pitching, the inconsistency with offense, it's a big problem. If you can't score runs, obviously you're going to lose baseball games. And I think we can both agree with that.
Yeah, I think when, you assemble this lineup, you mentioned Walker kind of getting a steal for a signing. You think maybe my pitching won't be the best part of this team, but certainly the bats are going to carry us. And, these 2-run losses, realistically, you're thinking at the start of the season, if we're within a 2-run game going into the 6th inning, this team is definitely going to compete, and we're definitely going to be able to steal some wins with the offensive firepower, which we have. And so now I think, as Sam was kind of urging, the Mets either need to, at least in my opinion, need to decide whether they're going to go all in right now, which at least I think they should, because that NL East is still up for grabs, because who knows what the Braves are going to do down the stretch. But also, if they're going all in, something needs to happen in that dugout, in that clubhouse, to emphasize to these guys, because clearly it's not your owner bashing you on a public, social media platform. That clearly didn't get you guys going, because you just lost 8-0 last night. Someone in that locker room, maybe a Pete Alonso, maybe a Lindor now that he's back, needs to emphasize to these guys on the Mets that if we want to make a run, they certainly should think that they're talented to make some noise if they make it to October. But if they need to make a run, they got to get it done at the dish rather than, relying on good pitching.
I think where the Mets going all in this year, I mean, in principle, it makes sense, because everyone that's hurt that we mentioned has a chance to get healthy. And they can, like you said, that NL East is up for grabs. Atlanta and Philadelphia, they're kind of just in the middle, in purgatory, I guess is the word. But there is a chance that the Mets can get healthy and get hot to make a really last-second push. And it could work out, it could not. But I think where they really need to hit the reset button is to fire Luis Rojas. I do not like him at all. I think his decision-making is almost galaxy brain. He tries to overthink everything. And when he does stuff, it's way too hard to understand. His lineups are weird. Everything about this guy is just, you don't want him as a manager. They need, who's going to be, this might be a little bit high of a bar, but who's going to be like the Joe Torre? Who's the Tony La Russa? Who's going to sit there very seriously on the bench like this and take the manager's position very seriously? Who's that going to be? Could that happen in the next, what is it? Fast forward 3 or 4 months. Could that even be a thing? If you want.
I think that for the Mets, the question is the talent on the field good enough to get you to the World Series? Because obviously, I mean, you play in New York, the Yankees are always in the playoffs. So there's that always above you. And you want to establish the Mets as that, not so much a little brother anymore, but like maybe a biannual contender for the NL East. And I just don't think Rojas is the guy for that. I think there's too many inconsistencies in the lineup. I think that there have been questionable times in which he's gone to his pen, especially in those close games out west. And some of those, even when he goes to the pen, some of the guys he brings out, you're just like, why are we going righty versus lefty to start the inning? So I think Rojas is going to be definitely, also depends on how he's able to manage at the end of the season. I think if he's now fully healthy with the lineup that he wants, if he's able to string together some wins, maybe even if he doesn't make the playoffs, his job will be safe, but it's just all contingent on how he finishes.
LOL, Mets are back. The Mets fans were tricked once again by the cruel joke that their ownership would promise them to win games, but that they've continued to lose. But coming up in a little bit, we're going to talk about the team that's way better than them, the New York Yankees. Lou Orlando will be joining us in a bit. And stick around for our fantasy football segment. If you guys need some help with drafting your teams, well, we're going to offer you some advice. This is One-on-One here on Wednesday night. We'll be right back. Welcome back to One-on-One Nightly here on 90.7 FM, WFUV's longest running sports call-in show. Thomas Aiello, Keenan Troy, and Lou Orlando, as I promised. He has appeared. He has ingratiated us with his presence. We are so happy to have him. Lou, welcome. I know you're not Sam, but you're a new character, and welcome to your first one-on-one, dude.
Thank you, man. Listen, I got blonde hair, so it all works out. I just want to say, first of all, I like your shirt. And then I'm obviously wearing a Yankees jersey. You don't break open the jersey every day, but 11-game winning streak. Come on, guys. Celebrate.
The jersey in sports, like the principle of the jersey, is so special to sports fans because it only comes out at very rare times. I remember in high school, I'll give you guys a quick story. When the Knicks would win games, this was before they were a smart team. This is when they were kind of soup brains. I would wear my Kristaps Porzingis shirt every time the Knicks won, and that would be 20 so times a year. And it felt great because I had other Knicks fans in the school who were like, oh yeah, let's go. Like we can start a Knicks club, right? And it never materialized to anything until I got to college. But we got to talk about the Yankees, guys. And they have struck the iron when it is hot. They have caught fire. 11 straight wins last night, beating the Braves 5-4 in a heart attack type game with Aroldis Chapman once again rolling out to the hill and just continuing to add to the theme of the Yankee roller coaster, which has been the 2021 season. And Keenan, you're a White Sox fan, so I'm going to patronize you a little bit here. The Yankees have a positive record against your team. You guys do have the Field of Dreams game. I will give you that. By the way, that was an epic game, the way that MLB did that. Well done to them. But the White Sox have not beaten the Yankees very much this year, kind of at all. And Keenan, I just want to hear from the outsider's perspective. What do you see coming from this Yankees team? What are your vibes coming in? What do you see them doing in the future?
So I think, obviously you start after the trade deadline. Yankees make some splashes, bringing in Gallo and Rizzo. And you think maybe they're going to take a starting job. But I think what you've seen with the introduction of those two players, just because they're superstars, at least before they got to the Yankees, it kind of lit a fire under some guys to step up and produce. And I think that's what we've been seeing on this Yankees tear, which, might I add, has been against really solid ball teams, starting with the White Sox, and then you beat the Angels for one, and then the Bo Sox, kind of play the Twins, who you could just, move them to Williamsport and let them play in Little League because they're garbage. But I will say, if you look at the Yankees team and the production they're getting now, guys like Judge, who, was not as dominant as he was in past years at the start of the season. Stanton's kind of heating up. Tyler Wade is a stud. Not a Yankees fan, a Tyler Wade fan. I'll just mind that. But yeah, you've seen a lot of these veteran crew kind of piecing it together, gaining momentum right when they need to. And now the Rays, who were at probably like 3 weeks ago cruising in that division, maybe worried a little bit about the Red Sox. The Yankees are slowly coming into the picture, and they're just waiting for the Rays to drop a series, and then all of a sudden the Rays are battling for a wild card spot.
The thing, I think, Thomas, you can relate to this. We're back to expecting to win every day, and that kind of takes me back the good old days of 2017, 2018, 2019, a very long time ago. Those great days of just going in. You didn't even have to look at the schedule. You just turn on the TV and you're like, all right, we're going to win today. And if we lost, it's like, whatever, we'll get them the next day. And that's what it's been. And it's crazy to think that for most of this season, it hasn't been like that. And I know that sounds spoiled. I know it sounds pretentious. But I mean, this is a Yankee team that came in with huge expectations that was supposed to be one of the best, if not the best teams in the AL. To mount this comeback, we're confident. And just the pitching, Nestor Cortez going 7 innings, like every single performance. Luis Hill hasn't allowed an earned run. It's criminal that he's in the minor leagues right now, but just the production you're getting from these guys. Keenan, you mentioned Tyler Wade. I'll talk about Andrew Velasquez, the kid from the Bronx. It's all good vibes and just a blast.
I think it's been a season of frustration in the first half. A lot of yelling and screaming from fans. And then Brian Cashman, who I do give a ton of crap because he's a good GM. We can agree he's a good GM. The problem with Cashman is that sometimes I think he is so lazy in his signings. I mean, on the surface, LeMahieu wasn't really supposed to be what he's become, I think, right? We can agree he wasn't supposed to be this.
Supposed to be a backup.
Right. He was supposed to be a utility guy to come off the bench. A lot of people have questioned the Stanton trade. I have at times, a lot of times. And Stantonius runs appear once every 2 or 3 months, it seems. And that doesn't take away that when he's on, he is one of the best power hitters in baseball. But I think this deadline, Brian Cashman, has done the best job he's done since taking the job after Mr. Watts way back in the late 90s, before we existed. And I think this was one of his best trade deadlines, going out and getting Gallo, which I think people were kind of expecting to happen with the way that the Rangers season was going. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Anthony Rizzo, hello. Okay, the Italians are in the Bronx. So go figure with that. And then the best one, I think this is my favorite move. I don't know how you guys feel. Clay Holmes Hoy Park was supposed to be some magic second baseman. Clay Holmes has been a magic bullpen pitcher. He's been really good. And I think those moves, those little moves, along with those 2 big ones I mentioned, kind of, as Keenan, you said, rejuvenated, rekindled some sort of desire in that Yankee clubhouse. And really, in all honesty, they can make a serious run in the playoffs. I'm not going to doubt them to do that. And they might have to slaughter your White Sox along the way. I'm sorry to tell you the truth, but
yeah, I'd say to the, Yankee fan base, as they love to get out over their skis.
Oh, they do.
Let's worry about making it to October. Okay. We're 10 games up in our division. You guys still got a little bit to go to even sniff that top spot. But yeah, I think, coming into the trade deadline too, it's just, I think, as you were saying, Thomas, and even you, Lou, there's a lot of gripes from Yankees fans, right? It was a lot of like, how aren't we top of our division? You're getting such a strong returning cast that you're expecting, every game to be like, all right, this is, every series we're going to split or we're going to win it. Like, we're not going to be losing series, and we're not going to be losing to sub 500 teams. But now going forward, I think there's a lot of unanswered questions for the Yankees, because starting pitching has been really dominant coming off the All-Star break, a lot better than, I'd say I expected as a fan of the Yankees, but you guys who are diehards, who are wearing shirts on a call right now. I think, that starting pitching became a lot better than maybe you guys had anticipated. And so I think moving forward, and I think the biggest kryptonite, I think, for the Yankees moving to the playoff is their bullpen going to figure themselves out? I mean, we mentioned last night with Chapman, like, for a guy who's been so dominant for so long, to have the season that he's having, you just can't. I mean, for a White Sox fan, I'm excited because I'm like, okay, normally you see Chapman, you hear him come out, you're like, oh God, this is going to be 103 down the pipe, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, done. But with his command recently and his pitch selection, I think it leaves me scratching my head a lot when I turn on the Yankees up here in the Bronx. I'm like, what has happened? What is the mental kink that he's hitting right now?
I think it is funny, though, that even during this win streak, like, leads haven't felt secure. The bullpen still endured issues, especially Chapman. Maybe this is the win streak talking. I think the glass half full lens that you could look through is we're starting to see what certain guys are made of. Wandy Peralta comes in and gets his 5th save of the year. You told me at the beginning of the year that Wandy Peralta was going to have 5 saves. I wouldn't know who Wandy Peralta was because we traded for him. And we traded Mike Tauchman, who everyone killed Cashman. Mike Tauchman, I think, got DFA'd.
Yeah, DFA'd, yep.
So you want to talk about good trades. That's another one right there. Wandy, all of a sudden, we're putting him in high leverage situations, late innings, and he's shoving. So we're starting to figure out, all right, who can we kind of throw in these high leverage situations? So, I mean, listen, come playoff time, you're going to want Chapman to be right. And if Chapman's not, that's going to be an issue because I don't see the Yankees not going to Chapman, especially in big time playoff games. But right now, let's kind of find out what arms we have. Clay Holmes, with that nasty sinker he has, could he be a 7th inning guy? Jonathan Loizaga could be a closer if worse were to come to worse. Not even that, because so far he's been better than Chapman. So we're starting to figure out some of these arms, and there are more on the way. Michael King started throwing in Somerset today. If he comes back, he had a great first half. Where does he fit in? So, yes, the bullpen's a huge question. I think most Yankee fans would agree. Most Yankee fans are complaining about that right now. I think we'll figure it out.
I think with Chapman, you can't put him on a dog leash. That's the one thing you really can't do with a multi-time All-Star, a guy who's won the saves title. He throws, as Keenan, you said, he's chucking gas out of the pen. You can't put him on the dog leash, but you also can't put him in the dog house all the way. You can't, and you also can't leave him out there. So it's a lot of moving parts with him. I think what they should have done, and this is the one thing I would have been begging my assistants in the front office to had I been Yankees GM, to get rid of Chapman. Some team will buy into a guy that throws 105-1 just down the middle and you can't touch it. Someone would buy into it that needs a bullpen guy. And the Yankees have enough pen arms that have just, kind of shown up out of thin air almost in a way that have been really good for them. Clay Holmes, we mentioned. Albert Abreu is really starting to pick it up. He's got a 3.91. He has a save already. You can mention Joely Rodriguez, who came over with Gallo. He's been pretty good, and he's got a fun little pitching motion where he just slingshots from the side like this. He's fun to watch. And John Loizaga, who really should have been an All-Star this year. 2.3 ERA after, just up and down past 2 or 3 seasons. He's just kind of shown up out of nowhere, and whoever wants to pick this up, please do. How intrigued are you by the idea of Yankees closer platoon, where it's 3 or 4 guys can close it out, but it's not a true Mariano, Chapman, Josh Hader sort of situation? What do you guys think of a closer platoon?
I think it ruins a guy's rhythm. I think so. From the White Sox perspective, you've got 2 natural closers in Kimbrel versus Hendricks, and thus far the ball's been given to Liam. Every time they've gone into the 9th in a save situation or where they need a shutdown inning. And I think, granted, Hendricks has been inconsistent this season, but I think a lot of these guys are not so much head cases, but they're creatures of habits like a lot of people are. So I think maybe if you were doing a carousel of, okay, who's going to close out now, I feel for some pitchers, they might benefit from that. But I think it would be very difficult to tell maybe a little while ago, like, hey, you pitched in the 6th inning 2 nights ago. Tonight, you're going to go try and get a save for us when we're up 1 in the 9th. I feel like if you're consistently changing the, situations in which these guys pitch, I feel like for, a lot of these young arms too, they're not going to be able, some of them might falter taking that next step up to a high leverage situation in which they're not used to throwing.
So I agree with that, but I wouldn't be opposed to like stick with whoever's hot. Like if we get to October and Chapman is still not who he was in April or May, there's no reason to throw him out as your closer just because he was your closer at the beginning of the year. So like if Loizac is the guy, if he's the best reliever, throw him out there. And if he struggles in the postseason, I'm okay with them. Maybe the next time you throw out Chad or Zach Britton, you probably wouldn't go to because the injury now and his struggles. But a guy like Wandy Peralta that has now come in and gotten saves, I really wouldn't be opposed to just trying to ride the hot hand and listen, like whoever's throwing the best, throw him out there and see if he can get out.
I think the gasoline chucking out of the pen, obviously that's important. Yankee fans are spoiled in a way that they've been so used to Mariano that their expectation, Mariano, Derek Jeter, Andy Pettit in the playoffs. Like you're not going to find that core four that's so special. I don't think in our lifetimes, at least, we may never see that again. And the closest thing to that might be like Josh Hader, Mike Trout, and I don't know who. Insert infield star and starting pitcher here. That's like top level. We're never going to see that again, and we may never get close to that. But the thing is, if you have a more than halfway good reliever, and the White Sox demonstrated this in the offseason, you pay him, you give him the money he wants. Elite closers like Hendricks, Chapman, Hader, you can even go as far as saying Kendall Graveman, maybe. Like he's been pretty good this year. And Edwin Diaz in Seattle, not Mets Edwin Diaz, Seattle Edwin Diaz, when he was still playing the trumpet song, which he still does. You have to pay those guys. You can't afford to let closers go because closers are such an important part. And also with hitting. Hitting is very important as well. You got to take the wood things and hit the other flying thing that the pitching guy is throwing. You got to hit it over the fence thing. Now I'm joking. You say you got to put the bat on the ball and score runs, and you got to do all these things. The Yankees lineup has been rejuvenated, like we mentioned before, with Gallo and Rizzo and guys getting motivated. Hey, I don't want to lose my job. And Keenan, I'll pass this to you because you're the White Sox fan. You've got a ton of deadly bats, 1 through 9, pretty much in your lineup. What is the luxury of having such great bats and getting runs the way that they do in bunches? It's so important in today's game, especially with how it's played out with analytics. Right.
And I think, both the White Sox and Yankees, I would say, are probably the most potent offenses easily in the American League. If not, I mean, maybe the Dodgers, but I think even the Sox or the Yankees, push comes to shove, I think they've got better bats. And I think, one of the luxuries is that, and I think we're definitely seeing it with, the Yankees loading up, but still getting, consistent run production from some of their more tenured guys, is for once in my life, even last season, maybe a little bit at the end, from watching the White Sox, I was confident, unless Leori Garcia is in the lineup, because I don't like him. That's a different story. I'm confident it's so relaxing to every time a guy comes up to bat, you're like, okay, there's potential for us to get something going here. After 6, you don't fall off. You don't have holes in your lineup. But at the same time, it's kind of a dual-edged sword because on the one hand, you're super optimistic anytime somebody comes up. But on the other, you look to the same guys. You look to the Judge in the White Sox. You look to the Anderson. You look to the Abreu. You look to the Stanton. You look to those guys to keep it going. So it's almost more frustrating when they're not getting it going and somebody like Tyler Wade's hitting well. Because then it's like, what is Tyler Wade picking up on that the guys we pay significantly more than Tyler Wade, they can't figure out? Why can't they time it up? So I think, having such a potent offense, especially as the Yankees try to make this push, it obviously benefits them a lot. And I think you'd be really dumb to try and, fix something that's not broken. But I think after the fairy tale ends, because I don't think they make it out of Oakland with the winning streak intact, I think you're going to see maybe, regression in the sense that they're not going to win 11 in a row again. I think for Boone, you're going to have a lot of questions to answer in terms of who's going to be your everyday, first baseman, outfield trio, whatever, because as the season gets tighter to the end, you're going to have to make, those decisions. Okay, these are my guys that I trust the most to go win, and wins aren't as easy to come by.
Yeah, and it's really important for the Yankees to keep winning, because even just in the AL East alone, you have 3 other teams that I truly believe could win the division. Toronto's in 4th place. They could easily be, like, I'm biased. I still think the Yankees are the best team in the AL East. I still think the Blue Jays could be the 2nd best team in this division. If you were to hand me the Rays roster and the Blue Jays roster and say, pick one that you think could win a division and go all the way, I'm taking the Blue Jays roster. I know the Rays, that's their thing. They continue to overperform to a point where it's just insane. So you have to respect them. But even the Red Sox, who I think everyone has written off, they get hot again, and all of a sudden, you have to keep winning. So the bats are going to have to stay hot, and that's why, like, Luke Voit didn't start either 2 games against Atlanta, and I thought that was odd. I thought he would start one of the 2 games because he's just been so red hot, and we've seen it before, like with the load management. Like, you sit a guy, he comes back, and he's just not the same. I think they did that with Stan. They sat Stan for like a day that first run he was on, and he came back, and he never quite got on that run again. And now he's kind of again, we're seeing him get hot again. But Aaron Boone has a lot of choices to make with this lineup. You can't sit Luke Voit every day. You can't have him just be a pinch hitter. He's too good.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that Yankees fans have gone. Rizzo and Voit can't play together, and there's a world where they can, because now that Stanton can actually move around in the outfield and his legs just don't fall off, essentially, is the hope. That
and he looks good.
Yeah, and he's been all right. He still has a good arm out there. I mean, yeah, we know he can't run. We know, believe me, everyone knows this. But the fact he can still throw, he knows how to track a fly ball, and he can still be productive at the plate, that's a humongous win, because you can move so many guys around within the lineup and still keep the consistent starting 9 out there. And whoever's pitching, they don't have to worry about, oh my God, am I going to get run support? Calm down, but we got this, man. That's the key to this, is the lineup versatility. I think teams with lineup versatility really just run the league. And we see with the Rays, they don't have quite the talent that the White Sox, the Yankees, or even the Astros, maybe, if you want to go that far, that they have. But Kevin Cash is the best manager in baseball because he plays the matchup so well, and he uses his lineup to the absolute T. It is so detailed, so thought out, so calculated. It's so well done. And I think that's the formula that teams should follow, because the Rays the Dodgers win the Mickey Mouse World Series last year, but the Rays in theory are probably a better run ball club with how they manage their team. But we're going to get to the playoff race right after this next break. Who is going in? Who is going to be out? What teams are going to sneak in? Who's going to be disappointed? And stick around. Make sure Lou's going to still be here. And we're going to be talking fantasy football later on. So stick around for that. This is One-on-One, and we will be right back. The baseball playoff race is heating up, and we need to dissect it. Welcome back to One on One here on 90.7 FM, WFUV's longest running sports call-in show here on this very greasy and hot Wednesday evening in the late parts of August. Tom Cielo along with Keenan Troy. Lou Orlando is back. And gentlemen, the MLB playoffs, they are heating up, and there's a lot of entertainment happening between the NL East being the NL least. I think you can say is the term for that, with being up for grabs the way it is. The Milwaukee Brewers are running away with the Central Division, the National League, and in the West, you've got the 3-team race. And then the AL, the Yankees creeping up, as we just talked about, the White Sox, Tampa Bay, it's Tampa Bay, not Tampa, Tampa Bay, and Houston Astros, they're lurking, and the A's. So everyone's getting in on the playoff race, and there's only so many spots to go around. So we need to start in the National League. You start with the wild card teams. Lou, you're going up first, dude. Who is going to take the National League East? It's become the National League least with how abysmal it has become. It's reflecting the NFC least in NFL. I think we can start to draw this comparison, and no one seems to want to win it.
This isn't a bold take by any means, but I think it's going to be the Braves. They've got a little bit of a tough stretch right now. They just finished off with the Yankees. They get swept. They got to play the Giants and the Dodgers. But then after that, it's smooth sailing. They got like 6 against Colorado. I see Washington. I see Miami. I see Arizona. They got a lot of just easy games that even this Atlanta team that's not at full strength, right? They don't have Acuna. They're missing 2 of their top starters. But they got hot, and they're kind of riding that. Even though they've lost to 2 of the Yankees, I think they'll get right back on the ship. Now, they might lose to LA, to the Giants, but after that, I mean, I really think that this team, the Rockies aren't in the same league as the Braves right now. And I look at the Mets, I just don't have any faith. To me, they look dead. And even though the Mets schedule, I mean, it's not terrible, right? They got some easy wins there, but I just don't know that they're going to take them. They're off. They can't hit. They're right there with the Dodgers, and they just can't hit. I don't see how that's going to change.
Yeah, I agree with you, Lou. I think Atlanta holds on. I think at this point in the season, looking at how inconsistent the Phillies have been, and same with the Mets, and I mean, the Braves haven't really been consistent, or they've been consistently average, which has gotten them top spot. I just can't imagine either the Phillies or the Mets heating up to the point where they catch the Braves and surpass them. I could see maybe the Mets, pulling it within a game, half game or something. But I just can't see the Braves with how not dynamic they've played, but they've just played, watching them, especially against the Yankees. They just play good fundamental baseball. And so I think the Mets are too riddled with inconsistencies. I think the Phillies lack so much offensive firepower, with the exception of Hoskins coming off the IL, and then Harper once in a blue moon deciding he wants to be an MVP candidate, maybe. And then staying out east, though, with the AL, it pains me to say it, but I think that the Yankees are going to catch the Rays. I think that the Rays run out of steam. You're saying earlier that Cash, he's very versatile, always looks at the matchup. Not that he's bound to get something wrong, but I think at some point, just the engine runs out of steam a little bit. And if the Yankees continue to stay as hot as they are, I think they're going to overtake them. But what's most important for me is like the division, especially in the AL and in the NL too. You've got some wild card spots that are up for grabs that are going to be very interesting to see how it shakes out. Because I think, at least in my opinion, if the Dodgers don't win the West, I think the Dodgers could get bounced first round in a wild card game. I really do. So I think, watching the West race for both divisions and then kind of paying our mind to the East in the AL, I think those races are going to be really important, not only for who makes the playoffs, but every team's playoff chances.
There is a lot of conversation on social media. I've had this conversation in real life too with people. I just want to stick with the Dodgers, that they can be beaten. And on paper, it's a super team. There's no denying that they've assembled a super team out in Los Angeles. And I know that the slogan is built, not bought. How about you change it to bought, not built? Because they're turning into the late 90s Yankees. They're getting everyone that they want at the price that they want, and they're getting them at the right time. And they picked up Scherzer and Turner at the deadline. But yeah, I think the Dodgers can be beaten. It's not a crazy thing to say at this point, because some of these teams, I mean, Keenan, you mentioned Atlanta is kind of just strolling around in the very average position of baseball. Cincinnati might be a thing. They can whack the baseball out of the yard at any given moment between that lineup of Castellanos, Winker, who was a first-time All-Star this year. They've got Eugenio Suarez and Mike Moustakas platooning, and they've both had their ups and downs, but I'd say when you need them to, they can step up. But the race in the AL East, I want to stick with that now, jump to this. Tampa Bay, it turned into Tampa Bay when Tom Brady arrived, and everyone just, all the teams down there started winning. Lightning won the Stanley Cup. Tom led the Bucks to the Super Bowl, and the Rays went to the World Series in his first year down there. But I think, Keenan, you put it best. Kevin Cash and that engine in Tampa Bay, it might run out of some steam. I thought Nelson Cruz, that pickup was good. That definitely breathed another month of good baseball into them, but they definitely undershopped at the trade deadline. I thought they should have gone for more stuff, particularly pitching, because the pitching, the stable bullpen that has been touted by Tampa Bay fans they lost Diego Castillo. Nick Anderson has not been around. And the guys they're running, I mean, Kittredge he's pretty good. I wouldn't say he's terrible, but the rest of the guys there, Michael Wacha, like you're pitching Michael Wacha, he's not very good. I don't know. Tampa Bay, they're such a wild card at this point. We thought they were going to be really good. Lou, being a Yankees fan, you obviously know a little too much about them. But do they still sneak into the wild card? It's entirely possible that they can.
I mean, look, I think if the Yankees bounce them for the division, I think they are the wild card team. I'm almost hesitant to say that the Yankees will even bounce them, because, I mean, I would love to come out here and be like, yeah, this roster should not be playing as well as they are. But that's the story every year. Like, I'd love to look at their rotation and be like, I don't even think I can name all 5 guys in their rotation. Now that Glasnow's hurt, it's like they're throwing out Luis Patino. I think Yarborough's back. I think Archer got hurt again, which I feel bad for the guy.
Back.
I think he had to get pulled early because he had some discomfort. Like, it's again, but I can't say that they're gonna fall off, because I think that all the time, and they just overperform. They're gonna have to keep playing well, because the thing about the Yankees win streak, right? They won 11 straight games. Over the course of that, the Rays went 8-3. And that was the thing with the Red Sox. When the Red Sox had their big collapse, it wasn't just that the Yankees were playing well. It's that the Red Sox completely fell on their face. The Rays keep playing well, man. So I would like to say that they regress, but I think they win the division.
I think that leaves a lot of questions, though, to be asked when they get into October. I mean, last year, great run into the World Series. But my biggest speculation is whenever you play that, we're facing the matchups, very Joe Madden-esque. When he was in Tampa Bay, he did it. He also did it a ton with the Cubs. And I mean, yes, he got the Cubs to World Series, which, job done. But after that, you saw countless mistakes from Joe Madden managing, when you're just solely focused on the matchup versus who can actually produce and who you're more confident with. So I think, whatever that AL East ends up being, I think you're going to get the Yankees and the Rays. I think the Red Sox aren't going to make it out. I think either you're going to get that A's. Mariners are also making a push, which we'll get to in a second. But I think the Rays' real season, the real litmus test is going to be what they're going to do in October. Because, making it to October's, it's good that you're able to manage that far, but we saw how they came so far last year, fell short. Are they able to make the adjustments necessary to take the team maybe to a World Series championship, or at least back to the World Series? Or are they going to be figured out?
Yeah, as scared as I am to say that they're going to fall out of the division, when they get to the playoffs, I think good teams beat them. I think the Yankees, the last time they played them, they won a series against them with their minor league guys. So, I think, a good team, whether it's Chicago, whether it's Houston, whether it's the Yankees, if they go up against the Rays in the postseason, they shouldn't be scared. They should look at them and they should go, we're better than this team. And truthfully, every other playoff team will be.
I think you guys both hit the nail on the head between the pitching just going down. But yeah, the Rays, in principle, they're not a more talented team than the Yankees. Their best player is Brandon Lau. Okay. And Brandon Lau, I mean, he's a good player, but he's no DJ LeMahieu. I mean, that says a lot, but he's no Aaron Judge. He's no Gallo. He's not one of those game changing sort of guys. He's a guy. I think on a really good team, he's the 6th or 5th best player on a really good team. But the Rays, just again, the magic analytics just strike every time. I don't know what formula they're running. I would like to know. I would really honestly like to know. I'd like to run a whole CSI episode with Ice-T or Law and Order, whatever show he's on, and get him in there and investigate some stuff. But I don't know how they do it. And the rest of the AL, between Seattle, like you guys said, who is a team I think we all kind of wrote off at the beginning of the year. We didn't really expect them to be in this position. They've really turned it around. They picked up Diego Castillo from the Rays, actually. Go figure with that coincidence. And you know what? I think next year that's going to be their year. But right now, they can make some noise heading into that wild card spot. And I think it would be fun to see them in the wild card spot, Keenan, don't you think?
I think it'd be some fresh blood, definitely. I think out west for at least the past 3-4 years, since the Astros have been really dominant, it's only been the A's that have been really in contention. So I think you're spot on by saying I think a lot of people in the baseball world wrote off the Mariners at the start of the season. Not only a small market team, but weren't struggling, but definitely weren't making any strides to challenge for that division. But they're 6 game back from the Astros. The A's are only 1 game ahead of them and making the A's 5 game back to the Astros. I personally think that division's still up for grabs because looking at the remaining schedule, if they're not playing each other, they're playing somebody from the NL West, with the exception of, I think the Mariners pick up like the Braves or maybe the Mets for 2. But they're playing it's a lot of West versus West down the stretch out there. So I think that the Mariners can sneak in. I think they can only sneak in, though, realistically, is if the A's and the Astros go at each other and the Mariners just take up small wins along the way. Because I don't think they're good enough to get into that spot simply by beating both teams outright. I think they need the A's and the Astros to bring each other down, and then the Mariners are going to slide in. But who knows? It's baseball. So maybe the Mariners get 11 straight and suddenly go top that division, or maybe they drop 11 straight and we kind of see that they're 1 year away from everybody and all those young studs they have, playing up at their potential or even above.
I'm more confident in the Mariners than I am in the Athletics. I think the Athletics could really drop out of it. It all depends on this Yankees series right here. They've lost 4 straight. They're 2-8 in their last 10, and the Mariners have won 3 straight. They're a game back of the Athletics, and if they jump them, all of a sudden they're the team that's competing with Boston for that second wildcard spot. I have no faith in the Athletics. I don't know. I've never had faith in them all season, really. And I know Matt Olson's good. I know Chapman's good. I know they have a good rotation, Caprillion, Mania, Montes. But if you told me to pick, I would take the Mariners over the Athletics, especially right now, the way the A's are playing. So I would totally buy on the Mariners. I think they could sneak into a playoff spot, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Shout out to Jim Cramer, because I watched Mad Money last night, and when he says booyah on a stock, I'm going to booyah on the Mariners. Buy into them right now. They are, like you guys said, they're hungry, they're motivated, and they're young too. They're essentially MLB babies at this point, but they're not playing like babies kind of at all. And if we want to jump to the National League, the one team I really want to focus on, because everyone talks the Dodgers, the Padres, the Giants, the Braves. Can we talk about the Milwaukee Brewers, and can we appreciate that they have 3 insane starting pitchers who are just carrying them right now? And finally, Christian Yelich, who was MIA to start the year, has shown up a little bit at least, and he's been way more productive. The average has jumped over 10 points, I believe, is the count that I have here. I think the Brew Crew is the team that people are just kind of like, okay, yeah, whatever. You got Giannis, have fun. But I think this is a legitimate World Series team. I don't know how you guys feel about them, but I think they're gonna bring down one of the Megatron Transformers that are going to be entering the National League playoff picture.
Oh, they're a postseason nightmare for anyone. Because you talked about that top three. The tired phrase is playoffs. It all comes down to pitching. And you can really throw out a 3-man rotation in the playoffs. And so if you have to face Burns, Woodruff, and Peralta, I mean, it's good luck. And also, I'm pretty sure they're a lock to face the winner of the NL East. So is it safe to say that they're a lock to go to the NLCS? And then I think they could beat the Dodgers. I think they could definitely beat the Giants. I think you're right. They're the sleeper team to be in the World Series. They're the team that you could really buy in on because they have a really easy path to get to the NLCS.
Definitely. And I think, everyone especially in the baseball world, you look at the real contenders, you immediately think out West. You thought the Padres were going to be something special. And as far as I'm concerned, they're dead. Maybe get a wild card spot because, the rest of the NL is pretty tough when you're not talking about, division leaders. And then the Giants, who I think perform very well. I just don't think they're going to be good in the playoffs. I don't think they've got a dominant arm. But then you look at the Brewers and say, okay, maybe they play the NLCS if they make it that far and stack up against the Dodgers. What a treat that will be to baseball fans everywhere, because you are just going to have probably like a 4-hit ball game of just absolute shoving from your starting pitchers from both teams. And I really think that Brew Crew can make it all the way. I think whatever is it, American Family Park now? What was once Miller Park?
They changed it. Yeah, I don't remember what it is.
Yeah, well, it should be Miller Park because how are you going to be the Brewers without Miller Park as your home? But they play extremely well at home. And yeah, as we were saying, a top 3 like that, it will almost always give you a chance to compete. And especially with Yelich starting to pick it up too. You need him to be hot if you're really going to contend for a World Series. But even if he's batting okay, those 3 starting pitchers are definitely going to give this team, a chance every time they take the field.
Thomas, you asked if the Dodgers are unbeatable. I think the best shot to beat them is in a wild card game, right? One game, if you're lucky, right? Because then if you have to face that team and you have to face Buehler, Scherzer, and a healthy Kershaw and all the other arms they have, then it becomes a really entertaining series, but the odds start to get stacked against you. So that is where I think a team like Milwaukee that can match them starter for starter, they probably have the best shot at knocking them down.
Can we just appreciate where they would be without Willy Adames? Getting aggressive and making a trade, that just flipped a switch in that Brew Crew clubhouse. And I would even argue it propelled Giannis to a NBA Finals ring, but that's a discussion for another day. There's just this energy that comes with him. He plays a pretty damn good shortstop, I'd say, with his glove. And in Tampa Bay, you can argue the bat was very blah. It was hit or miss at times, but he's picked it up. He just rejuvenated the Brew Crew's lineup. Yelich is starting to wake up a little bit. Daniel Vogelbach, who they acquired this year, he's been a nice little surprise. But overall, it's a very good baseball team. It's everything you want to see. It's pitching. It's pretty good defense, especially without Lorenzo Cain in the outfield. It's a damn good bullpen headlined by Devin Williams, Josh Hader, who are lights out relief pitchers. And Omar Narvaez has also been another surprise. A great catcher, too. Really helps you a lot, especially as Keenan's shaking his head now. A great catcher. I think it helps you, especially if it's a good defensive catcher. I think it helps you a lot. But Omar Narvaez has been a nice surprise. But Keenan's shaking his head, and I want to know why. I want to.
It's only because of bad blood. Because Omar was with the White Sox, and he was awful.
Okay.
And this is I think he played for the Sox in 2016, 2017. Okay. So right as they were starting to, get the engine of the rebuild going, and Omar Narvaez was just a giant hole in our lineup. But yeah, as you were saying, Thomas, really good defensively. And I think that's what the Brewers always expected when they picked him up was, okay, he's going to be good for our pitching staff. And if he can get the bat going, it's a great addition. And he's done more than get the bat going. He's propelled this offense throughout most of the summer, or at least been a large contributing factor.
He made the All-Star team like that. What does that tell you? A guy who was another guy's been written off, and then all of a sudden, he has value for a team that just out of nowhere. And I want to get to one more point I want to make before we head to our break. The Cincinnati Reds, I know that they're lurking in the wild card spot, but They don't have, I don't think, enough pitching. I thought they should have gone out to get more pitching. That was my real issue with them. And if you see the theme I'm going with here, is I'm going to start talking about the Padres. They dismissed Larry Rothschild, and Lou is laughing his face off because he has a couple things to say. But the theme that I'm getting to is those two teams are great offensively. The pitching is, I'll use my notes. I'm kind of waving the white flag with them because, and then Lou, I know you want to talk a little bit about Mr. Rothschild. The pitching is really important, and the Padres dismissed their pitching coach earlier on this week because their pitching that had Blake Snell, Joe Musgrove, and Yu Darvish has, I'd say, severely underperformed. And you said how important pitching is in the playoffs. Can the Padres bounce back with the rotation, or are they going to be so offense dependent that where it's to the point you're very concerned for them?
So I would love to take this first if I can.
Okay.
So first of all, before we even get into the pitching, right? The Padres have to play 8 games against the Dodgers and 10 against San Francisco. And then they have 7 against Houston and Atlanta. And Cincinnati's kind of got a cakewalk. They have 9 against Pittsburgh, 4 against Washington, 3 against Chicago. A couple other good teams in the mix. They got to play St. Louis. If Cincinnati keeps afloat, San Diego's going straight down. And you know I want to talk about Larry Rothschild. We've been through this. Listen. He was the pitching coach for the Yankees from 2011 to 2019. And it always felt like he was just mediocre. So I looked it up. I was like, I wonder what the rotation numbers were for the Yankees under his tenure. Besides like one solid year in 2017 when they were 5th, every other year they were 14th, 15th, 17th in rotation ERA in all of baseball. So they were always middle of the pack to worse. Most of the time they had a 4 ERA. And I'll talk to you, Tom. It's like, when's the last time under Rothschild, like you remember, like we got a guy, trade or free agent, and he performed to or above expectations? Like it never happens. Sonny Gray called him out and said, "Why would you make me use my slider?" after he left. I think I remember Jay Happ being kind of hyped up and not doing that well. The one guy I think kind of lived up to the hype was Tanaka. But Tanaka was a guy in Japan that had like a 1 ERA. Like, could he have been better if he had a competent pitching coach? And in San Diego, Chris Paddock was amazing. Rothschild came. He's been a bust ever since. Blake Snell's come over. Nothing close to what he was like in Tampa Bay. Even Yu Darvish has like a 3.8 ERA, and he's been their best starter. Now he's hurt. I think Rothschild definitely screwed over the Padres, and it shows you what they think of him, that they fired him as they're trying to make the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think with Rothschild. Oh, sorry, Thomas. But with Rothschild leaving, I think it kind of shows you where the Padres are at, which is we talked about the Dodgers being able to buy it instead of grow it, or whatever phrase you want to use, but there's still something to be said about the importance of bench coaches and position coaches in the MLB, which I feel like, in a lot of situations is really overlooked just because you expect the guys to go out and perform because other professional athletes. But as you were saying earlier, Lou, like Rothschild was average with the Yankees. And so he gets an insane pitching staff on paper that you expect with that. They're going to at least contend for the division with the Dodgers and be a lock for a wild card. And yeah, you've had some, injury problems with Yu Darvish, who just got put back on the IL because during his rehab stint, his lower back was irritating him or whatever it is with him these days. But you've got guys that you look to at the start of the year, like Blake Snell, and you just say, what happened? And look at rookie Ryan Weathers, right? He was dominant through May. And then did Rothschild not, advance him to the point where he was throwing different sequences because he just started getting lit up. His ERAs, it's only at 3 and 3.5 something, but he's not as dominant as you thought he was at the start of the year. So I think
his ERA got up to 5. It's bad. It's bad.
It's bad.
It's horrible.
Sorry, Ryan. I was trying to cut you a break there, but Lou's having none of it on this show. But yeah, it's bad. So I think there's something to somebody in the Padres organization clearly didn't like what they were seeing. I don't agree with the time of the move, obviously, because right now for the rest of the season, their pitching coach is going to be their bullpen pitching coach. And he's got limited experience outside of a bullpen. So I think it was a wrong time for a move, but I think, as Thomas, you said earlier, it says so much about where the state of the Padres are if you're canning your pitching coach as you're in that, heat of a division race and a wild card race. Like, what do you tell your pitchers? Like, oh, well, the guy from the pen's taking over. Good luck.
I think you go with the pitching machine at the batting cages where it just loops the arm. Just do that. That might be better than actually having one of their ruined commodities starting pitching at this point. As harsh as that might be, and as crazy as that might sound, it may not be the worst idea in the world, especially for a team that's going to be so offense dependent come playoff time. But we're going to take a quick break. Once we come back with this break, NFL time, it's time to talk about quarterbacks and teams making weird decisions. We're going to stick with this theme. And also, at the end of the show, I'm going to keep saying it, fantasy football, we've got some pointers for you guys if you need help for drafts. So stick around on One-on-One. We'll be right back. The NFL has returned to our lives once again, this time with fans in the stands. Very exciting time of the year. Welcome back to One-on-One here on this greasy, very hot Wednesday evening. Tom Aiello, Keenan Troy, and Lou Orlando. We are back once again. We're going to talk some football. We need to go to the gridiron. There is a lot of quarterback competitions in the NFL right now. And it seems between, I want to say, half at least of the teams have a controversy at the most important position in football, that is the quarterback, right behind the offensive line. And the first team we need to examine, and this is as a Green Bay fan from New Jersey, okay, that just please, the Chicago Bears make me happy in a way that Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace have just galaxy brained this whole quarterback operation, trading up for the 11th pick to take Justin Fields to save their jobs. He looks great in the preseason. And 2 of the games he's played, he's thrown for 142 passing yards, 33 rushes. And that was in preseason game 1 where he had a pass and rush touchdown. And then game 2, 80 passing yards with 46 rushing yards. And they have come out to say Andy Dalton's going to start week 1. So I don't know what to make, because this is the most interesting quarterback battle in the NFL right now, outside of probably the Saints. Keenan, please help me. The Bears, are Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace really trying to lose their jobs after pretty much saving them for this season? What is going on in Chicago?
So before I begin my Bears talk, let me preface something to the WFUV audience.
Okay.
Though I'm a White Sox fan, I'm born and raised in Indiana, so my team of preference for football is the Colts. So if you're expecting me to freak out with some Chicago Bears dick butt kiss breakdown, it's not going to happen because, frankly, I don't care that much about the Bears. But looking at this quarterback situation, I think you go back to the Trubisky miss. I think you could call it that.
Debacle.
Yeah, debacle would probably be a more accurate word. Paying Nick, I think any football fan GM would tell you paying Nick Foles as much as you did last year was a mistake. And then going into he comes in and him and Mitch really split time. And I think, doing so hurt Mitch's confidence and maybe as a result of his poor play, but maybe he wasn't that good. Who knows? But then going to the offseason, you sign Andy Dalton too without releasing Nick Foles. So congrats, Chicago. You've got 33-plus-year-old quarterbacks who aren't very, the way the game's been expanding in terms of, run and pass threat quarterbacks. Neither of those two guys really fit that billing. But then you trade up to get Justin Fields. And I personally thought when, you heard they were trading up for Fields, I thought Foles or Dalton was going to be a package for that 11th pick. Neither of them were moved. So now you've got a first round pick, presumably third string to start the season. And then you've got two guys that were starters on different teams that you're overpaying to do their jobs. So I do like the call though by the Bears for sitting Fields to start the season. I personally don't think he'll be on the bench all year. I think if you get to week 7 and after week 7 you're 4-3, I think you're going to see Fields come in. But I think the Bears still have a really young and unproven offensive line. The last thing you want to do is, we saw it with Trevor Lawrence in a preseason game where the Jags offensive line or lack thereof disappears and he gets, blown up. I think Nagy and Pace both realize as long as Fields is unproven in terms of we don't know what we have, that extends our jobs a little longer. So why would you risk running him out there week 1 against the Rams, who we know with Aaron Donald coming up the middle? It doesn't matter who you got on the offensive line. He's getting through. So why would you start Fields week 1 versus let everyone else on the team kind of get set up and then inject him if he's needed? So I think the quarterback controversy, the narrative shouldn't be why isn't Fields 1? It should be why isn't Fields 2? Because I think right now they haven't released the full depth chart. I think they were going to go Dalton, Foles, Fields. Fields needs to be the number 2 on that team because right now he's just waiting in the wings doing nothing.
Yeah, I think it definitely is a nuanced conversation. I'd be shocked if it was like an Eli Manning, Daniel Jones thing where like after week 3, Fields is in there. But it is interesting to see. Thomas, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the Bears, especially with Dalton at the helm, should not have high expectations to get into a wild card, let alone win the division, right?
Yeah,
so even making the playoffs, they shouldn't have like lofty expectations. So that's the interesting thing for me, right? The question then becomes, is Fields ready? Because if he's ready and you're playing Dalton just because you think you might have a shot at making the playoffs or you think he gives you a better shot, I think that's stupid. I think you're probably a lock to be the 3 seed anyway in that division. Again, the question becomes the O-line. There's that funny quote from Fields about, wow, NFL is a lot slower than I thought it was going to be. And then he gets popped the next preseason game. His helmet comes up all the way to here. That's hilarious. But it is interesting. His, co-parts, the other people in his draft, Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, are going to be starting. We'll wait to see about Mac Jones. So there are other people that are in his draft class that are coming out week 1 and are starting. Granted, Jacksonville and the Jets don't really have the luxury of starting anyone else. But I really think it's an interesting move because this is a rookie quarterback that you definitely want to get reps. And so I don't hate them starting off with Dalton, but I would hate it if it becomes like a playoff push thing and they're just robbing Fields of the reps that he needs.
I think where they mess up, number 1, the offensive line, Keenan, as you said, is mashed potatoes. Okay, it's an all-time kind of like Giants-ish bad. I know that I am picking out the Giants because they've just been the team that has not had the line the last couple of seasons. It's kind of on that level. The second thing is you have Allen Robinson. Okay, I do need to give him some attention because A-Rob is my man. I love Allen Robinson. I'm a big Allen Robinson guy. He is strong. He is fast. He makes plays. He can catch. He can run. He runs good routes. The only problem with him is he hates to be tackled. My problem is, why in the world you have a player like Allen Robinson who needs something new at the quarterback position that's not Blake Bortles. I know producer Alex Walls likes Blake Bortles. You can't run him with Nick Foles and Andy Dalton, who Skip Bayless, I think, put it best. He said that Andy Dalton is all right. And this is him being the Cowboys gypsy that he is. I don't know why you have a commodity as precious as A-Rob and you're running out there with Dalton. I like you guys said, maybe you shouldn't throw Fields into the fire immediately. I think that's fair. But the fact that he can use his legs to escape pressure in the pocket and can make things happen by just ground and pound sort of play. And yeah, you can still be on the move and find A-Rob or Mooney or whoever's out there, Cole Kmet. But they're going to rely so much on their defense this year. Keenan was saying this at the beginning of the show. They're going to be so defense dependent. You have to laugh at it, at how they're just going to be pulling out this season. And I think with Fields, again, he shouldn't be the week 1 starter, but week 3 or 4, you got to throw him in there at some point. You don't just leave the 11th pick at quarterback, especially, might I add, on the bench to extend your job. You know, the Bears fans haven't had a good quarterback since Mike Ditka was coaching. I don't know how long has it been? Way before that, probably. I don't even know. It's been too long since they've had a good quarterback. So they need to try something new, especially with commodities like Robinson, Mooney. They need to give those guys a chance to help them because they are good. They are good. Having good skill players is good. Please utilize them. I can't stress this enough. Keenan, go ahead. I can't. Go ahead.
Well, just, we're talking about a lot of this preseason play and how, Fields is looking okay. Looked a lot better in week 1. Second week, I think going up against a little bit of a higher caliber team in the Bills in terms of who they've got on their bench. I think he saw some new stuff. And as Lou had pointed out, the game moves too slow and then he gets popped and his helmet's almost on the floor, which also is another thing I don't understand about football. Like, why don't you do your chin strap? But, maybe that's why I watch it and I don't play it. I didn't have that, on-field drip that was necessary. But talking about preseason football, someone I think that we all kind of saw and definitely delivered an all-time quote as only he could was Jameis Winston the other night for the Saints. Absolutely balled out. And I don't think any one of us is going to protest it. And I think the best part, yes, it's like a, bulletin board quote, but him talking about Drew Brees' mentorship, I think that was the perfect thing to happen to Jameis Winston because in the past, Jameis would look good. Not great, but he would look good and he'd have flashes, but then it always regressed back to like Jameis trying to do too much, Jameis not taking care of the football, Jameis making dangerous throws when he doesn't need to. And that quote that Breeze gave him was just like, sometimes you don't have to be Batman all the time. Sometimes be Bruce Wayne. And then when you need to be Batman, be Batman. I think for a player like Jameis Winston, that's exactly what you need to hear from a future Hall of Famer that you're mentoring under in that Saints scheme. Because that offense, offense is stacked. Defense is still good. Realistically, the only valuable piece they lost from that puzzle last year was Drew Brees. But when you've got such a heavy lineup with stars on the offensive side that don't require Jameis to make those impossible throws or, at least make Jameis the head case that he might have been down in Tampa Bay trying to make ridiculous plays that were far outside of his skill level. I think that moving forward, Jameis is going to be week 1 starter and probably the starter for the whole year. I think that, that display we saw the other night, he clearly still has the arm strength. Him going through his progression certainly looked a lot better, and he just played a lot smarter football. So no disrespect to Taysom Hill. I think he's a really talented cat. I just don't think he's a quarterback in the NFL, and I think Jameis is what the Saints are going to go with going forward.
And I want to transition to the Saints. This is the other quarterback battle that has been highlighted by NFL communities around the league. Jameis or Taysom Hill? Now, I know Taysom Hill a little bit coming from a Green Bay household. He was a backup for Rodgers for a good minute. He can run. He's got legs. That's his calling card. I was never a fan of his arm. I think it's very hit or miss. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I think he's very up in the air with it. He's always there. Everyone's going to throw interceptions. It just happens that's just football. If someone's going to have a step on your receiver and that inside route, and then bam, it's a turnover. that'll just happen. And Jameis had that 30-30 season and didn't look very pretty. Of course, there was times, Keenan, like you said, he looked pretty good, but then you're questioning, does this guy play football? You're starting to figure that out. I think with the Saints is they need to put Jameis in there because it's an offense where he can succeed. There's playmakers all over the place. Michael Thomas, I know he's hurt, but Michael Thomas in principle. Alvin Kamara, who's essentially a slot receiver at this point. I don't even consider him a running back. You've got Traquan Smith, who's a good number 2 receiver, and the defense carries a ton as well, and a great offensive line. Lou, Jamoose is the nickname I've got for him. Jabu is his Instagram. Do you go with Jabu or do you go with Taysom Hill? I don't have a creative nickname for him. Who is the quarterback one for the Saints?
Well, I'll use your nickname. It's Jabu. Let's go.
That's his Instagram.
Instagram. So Jamoose. We'll use your nickname. Listen, from a talent perspective, that's the easy decision. Taysom Hill does not have the arm strength of Winston. Few quarterbacks do. And I just think, listen, he kind of became a meme with that season, the 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions. Sean Payton even came out and said it. He's not going to do that in my offensive system. He's going to be a lot smarter. It's going to be a lot safer. He's got the talent. He doesn't have to force stuff down the field. I just think Taysom Hill is not ready. He's talented, but he's not ready to command the Saints offense, especially considering the Saints want to be a contender. They want to try and win that division. They want to compete with a very good Tampa Bay team. I don't think Taysom Hill gives them the best opportunity to do that. And also, I think Taysom Hill is way more valuable as that let him do whatever. Taysom Hill can still get plays at quarterback like he did when Drew Brees was at the helm. And he can still get looks at receiver and running back. And that's what makes him that triple threat that's so rare in the game. If he's the starting quarterback, you lose that. And I just think that Winston, with Peyton's scheme, would be able to run that offense a lot better than Taysom Hill would be able to.
And as you mentioned, Lou and Tom, before he took the job or the backup job, I guess, in New Orleans, he was still a backup. He's never really, with Drew Brees being sidelined for the ribs for a little bit, he's had probably, I don't know the exact number, I'd say under 10 games as a starting quarterback in the National Football League. And as Lou, as you mentioned, that window for the Saints, you got to be thinking we still are contenders. And you want a guy that has been, proven that he can at least play at that level. Maybe not as consistently as Drew Brees, because very few quarterbacks could do, but a guy that's been in there for high pressure situation, who's gotten the reps and who you think will excel in this scheme. And Taysom Hill is still going to excel in the scheme, just in a different role, which he's been doing his whole time down in the Bayou.
Now the Big Easy will be big rockin' come September once the NFL opens up week 1. Tampa Bay, Dallas, Thursday Night Football. Also my birthday, by the way, September 9th. So come over and have some cake. But that's going to do it for us here on One-on-One. It's been a blast with Lou Orlando, Keenan Troy. I'm Thomas Aiello. Our producer has been Alex Walls. Our sports director is Bobby Schiaffardini. Until next time, until we all appear again on One-on-One, we're saying have a good night, stay hydrated, and enjoy the sports for the rest of the summer.